Good evening, everyone. This is That Crypto from downtown Toronto, from the That Channel studios, and my name is Denis Serebryakov, and I'm here with
Avet.
Avet.
Avet
He's gonna be helping me today, and today we're going to be talking about like fundamentals. It's sort of a beginner meetup, but also even for experts, because every time we learn new stuff, we reiterate, we get a deeper understanding. So generally we'll be talking about the history of Bitcoin, Bitcoin itself, altcoins, forks of Bitcoin, and the blockchain. By the way, do you guys know what those logos are? Like the circles? Anyone? These are different altcoins. Well, except for the Bitcoin at the bottom. So this one is a Ethereum. On the top, it's Dash. It's a fork of Bitcoin. It uses proof of work and the masternode, sort of proof of stake. Plus, it has improved privacy. And the Litecoin, one of the first forks of Bitcoin, it's kind of faster Bitcoin, I would say. Okay, let's go. If any of you have questions, just grab the mic. Ralph has the mic, and so that everyone can hear. So just raise your hand, grab the mic, ask the question. So let's start with the history a little bit. Where's Bitcoin coming from? So there was David Chaum. I'm not sure if I pronounce his name correctly. But he was a cryptographer, and in 1982 he wrote a paper. It's called eCash, and in the 90s he created a company which was called the DigiCash. And his idea was to create the private transactions. So he used public and private keys, which means that you can encrypt the transaction, you can send something. Without revealing it to anyone. But he thought that the banks would use this system. So the entire idea was to hide the transactions completely, to hide the recipient, hide the sender, and hide the amount of transactions. But eventually, only one bank signed up to use his system, so you can't really transact without at least the second party. So it didn't work out. However, he introduced public key cryptography, which is used on Bitcoin right now. Every time you sign a transaction, before sending your Bitcoin, you sign it exactly the same way with the private key, and it can be read with the help of a public key. So then, in 1991, there was a white paper, which is called the linked timestamping, by Heber and Sornetta. So those guys, they realized there was a problem of forging the timestamp of any documents or anything which was digital. So that was a sort of the prototype of the blockchain. So the next document would have a hash of the previous document. So in this way, it was impossible to forge like any other data or anything actually in the past. So it was only the one-way street. So it didn't have any monetary implications. They were not thinking about this as
Well, we should give credit for times. It's 1982. It's 1991. It's previous millennium. It's not even.
Well, that's true. So, but they were not even thinking about the money. They were thinking about the proof of existence of documents. It's one of the probably one of the use cases for the blockchain when you.
It's still there. That problem still exists, and there are solutions coming up until now. So they were first.
So this data structure that they invented actually is in the basis for the Bitcoin ledger. So then in 1997, and all those guys, they were thinking about the theory of money, about the fiat money, how the governments can print the unlimited amounts of money. Back then, in the 80s and the 90s, they were fighting for freedoms and for separating money from the state. So that was the idea of the cypherpunk movement. And they were learning from the Austrian model of economics. Maybe, as you know, right now, in the last 100 years, we still use the Keynesian model of economics, where governments or states can create their own money. So those guys didn't like that. So in 1997, Adam Beck wrote a white paper about the Hashcash, which was a prototype for the proof of work. The Hashcash also didn't have any monetary implications. That was a mechanism to prevent spam, like email spam. And so the idea was, in order for you to send an email, you have to solve the problem, which probably would take your computer a few seconds, but that was enough to prevent spam. So if you're a spammer, you're sending millions of emails per second, but if you need to wait a few seconds between emails, you can't really send a lot of spam. So this invention is used in Bitcoin as a proof of work. So this is what miners do. Then there was a very interesting developer, Wei Dai. By the way, Adam Beck right now, he's, I don't know if he's the founder, probably the founder of Blockstream, the team that does the most development for Bitcoin. So they're still around, still working. Satoshi is not there, but those guys are still here. So in 1998, Wei Dai wrote a white paper which closely resembled Bitcoin, actually. So that was he called it the B money. But it was never launched. However, and then in 1998 and consequently in 2005, Nick Szabo updated his white paper on EGold, which those guys, they specifically were designing system for like monetary system. However, they didn't solve the inflation problem. Nick Szabo was thinking, well, he was using the proof of work to create money, but he didn't really know. So the idea was that the computers would be faster and faster with time, so you can create more and more money with time. So he didn't really solve how to deal with that. And they also didn't know how to manage the database in a decentralized manner. So more or less, like both of their solutions were centralized. Well, the database was copied to several computers. However, not everyone can join the network, let alone anonymously. So they were using the Byzantine fault tolerance, which we have in several blockchains right now. But this was the point of their concern and the security gap. So probably also worth mentioning that not everything was based on cryptography and blockchain and decentralization. In 1996, we have an EGold, which is an interesting solution that those guys, they had currency, they were issuing currency backed by gold, and at some point they had 3.5 metric tons of gold in their vaults backing up their currency, which was around 77 million at that time. The system was very popular. At some moment they had around $2 billion in annual volume of transactions. However, after 9/11 and all this
stuff around
extra legislation, they were required to get a money transmission license,
which they couldn't get. And
so the legislation was changed, because before that only companies that were transmitting fiat money were required to get a money transmission license, but those guys, they had like kind of digital gold, so it wasn't considered as money. However, then they were required to get one. Those guys actually attracted a lot of criminals because the system was pseudonymous, anonymous, so like it was very easy to get in. It was never hacked though. However, a lot of scams, a lot of phishing attacks, and so eventually in 2011 the EGold was shut down. There was, actually I read there was another spin-off of this system in Canada, EGold, in 2013, 14, and I think they're still alive. I'm not really sure what they're doing right now. Another digital payment system was PayPal. Everyone knows, everyone uses it. So the idea of the PayPal in the very beginning was the free monetary transaction between all the parties involved. So people in any country in the world could choose in which currencies they can keep their savings. So if you're somewhere in Russia, you have your rubles, maybe you don't like the inflation, and the idea behind PayPal was that if you have an account, you can just swap rubles into dollars and keep your savings in a stable currency. However, the same thing as with EGold, with time, it's just turned into a bank with all the regulations, all the KYCs, all the restrictions and sanctions, and yeah, so this is more or less what it is today. PayPal is more or less a bank right now. And a couple other mentions that I kind of figure out. The currencies, electronic currencies inside the games. So there was a game, it's called the Second Life. It's a virtual game where you could buy properties, you can build stuff, and they had dollars. And interestingly enough, so around 2012, 2013, that was the quite popular way of buying Bitcoin, because these Linden dollars were traded in different exchanges. And it was not so easy to buy Bitcoin. There was only one exchange, Mt. Gox, and we all know how it ended up. So they shut down, lost like 700,000 Bitcoin or something like that. And one of the ways was you can buy Linden dollars with PayPal, and then you buy Bitcoin with Linden dollars. And then the World of Warcraft had their own money inside the games called the WoW Gold. However, uncontrollable inflation drove the price down tremendously. It started with 60 cents per $1, and now it's something like 5,000 or 6,000 coins.
And we should assume it's coin for a game, so it's very specific.
Yeah, but it was very easy to send money. But these things is within one game only. Especially for World of Warcraft, Linden dollars you could send outside to an exchange. I guess must be a specialized exchange. So, and then the Bitcoin. So in 2008, October 30th, Satoshi Nakamoto published his white paper, and he called this Bitcoin a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And the idea behind it was the removal of the trusted third parties for transactions, so that people didn't require any banks and can send money directly from one person to another. So after like November, December, 2 months of emailing back and forth with different developers and cryptographers, changing the code a little bit. So in 2009, January the 3rd, Satoshi launched the Bitcoin, mined the Genesis block, and I think in the very beginning he was the only person who was just running the network. He had like one computer, and I think the second block actually came not 10 minutes after, but something like several days after, 7 days.
And the Genesis block, it's so fun. They used for a very first Genesis block some statements from Times. Can't recall the exact statement, but that's actually how you need to have your Genesis, and idea of Genesis can't exist in any blockchain. And Genesis actually give exact, that's how one blockchain different from another, based on the Genesis. Because any other block has been connected with the genesis all the way down. So easy but genius idea.
Yeah, so basically all blocks are connected to the previous one except the first one, the
Yes.
Genesis block. And he added the line from the Times,
Yeah, but
which
what
says
should
like the
line?
chancellor on the brink of the second bank bailout or something like that. So basically 2008 was the financial crisis, and
People together.
Bitcoin came to be at that time, and then, I don't know if you're familiar with the story, Satoshi was participating in developing the Bitcoin software until like about like
3 years.
around 3 years, and then he just disappeared. No one has ever seen him. He was communicating through emails. We know his email. If you send the email to Satoshi, you'll get an automated reply. Well, but up until now, we don't really know who he is or where he is. We know his wallet. We can see his bitcoins, which is around 1 million bitcoins. But they were never moved from the very beginning. So what exactly did he solve that other projects before him couldn't? So basically, there was a Byzantine general's problem, and how do you come to consensus in a distributed network when there are many people in the network communicating with each other?
And with the assumption they are untrusted, and probably some of them are bad players.
Yeah, so how do you agree which transaction you include in the database? So he came up with a solution which involved the proof of work developed by Adam Back, as we discussed previously. So the next solution that he introduced to Bitcoin was the regulation of inflation, or minting of the new coins. So basically, Nick Szabo couldn't figure out how to deal with the technological progress when in the future the computers are becoming faster and faster, so they can produce more and more coins with time. So Satoshi introduced the difficulty adjustment. If the computers are faster, it just means that it's more difficult to mine new coins. So basically, inside the algorithm, the issuance of new coins scheduled until the end of times. I mean, in 120 years, we'll mine the last Bitcoin, and then
that's all.
No more printing of Bitcoins. So this one is a genius invention, actually, because it regulates the inflation, which is the idea behind the...
Which
so those guys, they were opposing the system to the fiat money that we have right now, when the governments can print unlimited dollars and unlimited at their will. So if you try to save your money in dollars, you don't really know how much they're going to cost tomorrow. And, well, he created the blockchain. That's the immutable database where each block of transactions is linked to the next block of transactions, and you can't really change anything in the previous block.
Why? Because you need to resolve all the proof of work happened before that.
We'll talk about it in a second, probably. Yeah.
There you go. Beautiful.
What is a blockchain? So guys, if you have questions, you just raise your hand. If you
grab the mic is somewhere around, and questions are welcome. So
the blockchain is a decentralized distributed ledger, which is a database that is used to record transactions across many computers, so that any involved record cannot be altered retroactively without the alteration of all subsequent blocks. So basically, this proof of work requires investment of energy. And when you invest energy, you have to pay for it. So the idea behind it, like behind this game theory, if you invest your money, you really don't want to mess with the system and lose your investment. So you want to get paid back with Bitcoin. So technically, like the blockchain is you can think of it as just a database, or like Excel spreadsheets with a list of transactions.
When each of the cell connect to a previous one, and hence if you change the cell 1, it consequently change the rest of the cells, which you must recalculate.
Bitcoin uses cryptography in a couple of ways. So first of all, when you own your Bitcoin, you have your own private key that you can sign your transaction. So no matter what happens on the blockchain, no one can steal your Bitcoin. Miners cannot steal your Bitcoin. No one can steal your Bitcoin because you own your private key. So in order for you to move your coins from one cell inside this Excel spreadsheet to another, you have to have the private key to sign it. It doesn't matter if you're a miner or not. So when you sign these transactions, you transmit it to the network. So it's not included inside of this database yet. It's just inside of it's called the memory pool. So waiting for the next block to be compiled and finalized. So the miner, what it does, so they burn electricity to find the solution. This is called the proof of work, which the more computers are in the network, the more difficult it is to find, and it's designed in a way that it's, on average, every block is formed every 10 minutes.
So, like, what is difficulty? Algorithm expect that solution gonna match certain conditions. For example, in our case, then there has to be some number of zeros as the first number. It's very easy to just solve the hash. It's more difficult to solve the hash in a way that where first number should be 0. Very much difficult if the first 2 should be 0. 3, 5, 10. Not 10 as an example. So by adjusting that, by adjusting this kind of structure, difficulty come in place. Hence, even if you have one laptop or you have multiple servers running, they must match with the difficulty. More servers, more hashing power, highest difficulty. Less servers, less hashing power, less difficulty. And whatever you do, difficulty will be adjusted per hash rate that you have in the network. So this, again, another genius solution.
Yeah, and so basically, if you want to know what proof of work is there's a cryptographic function that you don't really know what's going to be in the result of it, the resulting hash. So you try, you're just guessing, you randomly input different numbers in this function, and you see what's on the outside. So basically, you just guess and guess and guess, and up until the moment you find the hash resulting with a number of zeros. That's the difficulty right now inside this the blockchain. So the miner finalizes the block, creates this hash of the block, and the first line, and then in the next block is that hash. So all the blocks are connected.
So why they do it? Because they get certain reward.
Yeah. So if you change even one character inside the block, the resulting hash will be completely different. So if you want to change anything in the previous block, so it will result in a different hash. So then again you have to run the proof of work and find a new solution for that. So this is how all the blocks are connected, and that's next to impossible to change without redoing. Like, you cannot change, you have to redo all the work.
So by the way, probably we want to say that the miner who finds that solution gets the reward, because algorithm itself gives to an address that produces the proper hash rate rewards in the bitcoins. When we say mining Bitcoin, and if we ask how Bitcoin arrived in our platform, in our blockchain, that's what it is. Miners out there find a solution, give the hash rate to the network, finalize the block, and gets the reward back. And that reward is going to be halved with a certain schedule.
Roughly every 4 years.
Everything.
So it started with 50 bitcoins per block. Then 4 years later, it was
25.
half to 25. Right now, it's 12.5.
And the
Next
next year?
May, it's gonna be 6.25. So the inflation or creation of new coins is getting slower and slower.
So if anybody would like just to pollute the network with crazy number of bitcoins, it's simply impossible. It's nobody can affect on this schedule. It is algorithm itself that dictate that.
Well, another question that you may ask, like how people decided that Bitcoin was something. So in the very beginning, that was just a software with some numbers, and it's still the same thing as it was in the very beginning. Someone's running the software, then someone sees the numbers in the database, that they can move from one account to another account, and all of a sudden,
You realize that numbers are kind of unique and
someone decided to pay money for this stuff. I think the first transaction was 10 months after. It was in October of 2009, if I'm not mistaken. Someone paid $5 for 5,000 bitcoins at that time. And this is not really known as a transaction, but the most famous transactions you probably guys heard of it, the pizza guy who spent 10,000 bitcoins for
2 pizzas.
for 2 pizzas. I think that was in 2010, something like that. So this is a very important moment when someone decided that those numbers inside the spreadsheet, they have value. Someone paid real money for them at that moment. And from that moment, when someone decided those numbers, they have value, other people start slowly joining the train. Right now, as you can see, people value those numbers at 10,000 US dollars. So,
There you go.
what are altcoins? Altcoins, short for alternative coins. So altcoins are any other cryptocurrencies, any cryptocurrencies other than Bitcoin, anything. So there's Bitcoins and everything else altcoins. So the most, or one of the first and the most famous, that's in the top 10 right now, it's the Litecoin. So basically what they did, they just took the Bitcoin software, modified it a little bit. They made the block time shorter. Instead of 10 minutes, it's 2.5 minutes. And they increased the number of coins by 4. Like it's not 21 million in total, but 84. But everything else is more or less the same. They a little bit changed the crypto.
They changed the rules how to mine it and things like that. However, the core economical idea behind Litecoin is extremely close to Bitcoin, with just the fact there are more Litecoins involved.
Yes, and with time, especially in the last few years, as cryptocurrencies becoming more and more popular, more and more companies and individuals, they just decided to create new coins. Some of them, they have different economic models. Some people just don't like that Bitcoin doesn't have inflation because they got used to the system we live right now, where
Inflation exists and must be.
where we believe that inflation is good for the economy, that
It's one of the drivers.
The drivers that make people spend money. So some of them, they have an unlimited supply. Like Ethereum, for example, doesn't have a cap on the production of Bitcoin of the Ether. I mean,
We can even say that Serum has a bit different idea that Bitcoin and Litecoin had.
yeah. So some of them have different distribution model. Satoshi was thinking how. Yeah. So I read his email. So he had a question how to distribute the money before people start using them. If people don't have the money, so then it's not really a currency. No one's gonna use them. So that was his idea, that anyone can join the network, anyone can start mining and earn Bitcoin. So that was the way how to distribute the Bitcoins, so that people start using them. And whoever joined those days and was mining on their laptops probably lost all of their coins because
Yeah,
they didn't
'cause-
have any value.
Yeah, like it was out of curiosity. If I run this software on my laptop, and if I hear how the fan works on my laptop and it goes hitter and hitter, am I gonna damage my laptop for this game? Probably not. You know.
And because they didn't have a lot of value, people were not thinking of the backups or storing them, and probably forgot about them throughout their laptops and hard drives. And then there are lots of stories when people are scouting the
Junkyards.
junkyards looking for their own hard drives. Yeah, and that's why right now it's estimated that about 3 to 4 million bitcoins are lost, and in total we have close to 18 million. So it's like 20%.
Yeah, and they're gone. I would say for forever.
So some altcoins, they offer different consensus algorithm. They remove the proof of work. Because proof of work requires a lot of energy. Some people don't like it.
Literally, you burn electricity.
Some people don't like it. Bitcoin burns
More than
electricity like a
some
small country
countries.
like Ireland or Belgium or something like that. However, in comparison, well, they're smaller countries, but I was researching, and in comparison, the idle home appliances in the United States burn more electricity than Bitcoin, like double. It was though like half a year ago. Now
No, probably
now
damage.
probably the same. So it's all relative. So Ethereum, for example, they introduced new features like the programming of money. So Bitcoin is it's not so easy to program. It's not so easy to write applications on top of Bitcoin. So Vitalik Buterin from Toronto didn't like that idea, so he decided to build a different blockchain where you can write applications or anything that you want, and everything's going to be on the blockchain. Why it's good? Because if we're talking about Bitcoin, no one can stop the transaction. There's no authority that can censor a transaction that can prevent it from happening, because there's no central server. There's no one to shut down. The same idea was for Ethereum. So if you have a software and you want to run it, so no one can stop it, because it's again, there's no central server, there's no central party. Everything is decentralized. All the databases are copied everywhere else. So that's the idea. Some other altcoins, they introduce privacy. So
Again, we said everybody can see how many bitcoins Satoshi has.
yeah, so
Some people didn't like it.
people think that Bitcoin is anonymous. It's not really anonymous, it's pseudonymous. So you see all the transactions are public. Everyone can see it online, on the blockchain. There are like websites with explorers. However, they're just numbers. So no one knows that the number belongs to a certain person. So we don't really know which addresses belong to Satoshi. We just guess because of the
They
time,
were from
because of the
time of
timestamp
beginning,
that,
yeah.
So, however, right now, if you connect your name to a Bitcoin address, for example, you go to an exchange, you provide your
KYCs, everything.
your ID, the exchange knows your name, and then they know the address to which they send Bitcoin. So theoretically, they can leak this information to whoever.
And let's not
Hackers or-
forget, because we are using internet, which is public. Internet providers, fun enough. Internet providers recently has a logs, and if they want and simply monitor the traffic, they can see, like literally see, which IP address transfers is involved in the Bitcoin blockchain activity. And we are all in Canada, and when you are getting in a contract with your provider, provider knew everything about you, your name, your address, everything. Hence, there is a strong theoretical link, and that link can be leveraged to find the person who get or send bitcoins. So, as Dennis said, it's not anonymous absolutely.
So it
In
can
the real
be,
world, it's not.
It can be if you
If you
do
do
the right
certain
thing, if you never connect your name to the Bitcoin address, but a lot of people just post the Bitcoin address on their website and just don't do that.
well, unless you want to get some gratuities in Bitcoin, but
Some tips.
of course, but know about that. Now everybody knew how much Bitcoin you have, and you exposed to. Yeah, you are not anonymous now any longer. Just accept it.
Yeah, so some coins like Monero, Zcash, they introduce the private transactions where you don't really see, you don't see the address of the receiver, you don't see the address of the sender, you don't see the amount transacted. A couple of new ones are Grin and BIM, so they use completely different technology. Yeah, so altcoins try to introduce new features that Bitcoin doesn't have, but most of the altcoins, they're just the money grabs or scams. So just copy the Bitcoin code base,
Change
give it a
couple of
different name, change a couple of
constants.
parameters, and invest in the marketing. Newcomers to the cryptocurrency space, they don't really know the difference between Bitcoin and other coins. Usually they see that Bitcoin is $10,000, which is too expensive.
Cool.
There are like other coins which are like a few cents.
Not to say that Ethereum was one of the first blockchain that you can create your own coin in like minutes, and it's based on the same protocol as Ethereum itself. And so many people just try to leverage and abuse this kind of system.
So the idea behind this was you can raise funds for your business,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I don't know if you've watched this ICO, like initial coin offering Mania in 2017 and 18. So companies were raising billions of dollars, and then they were just disappearing, most of them. So on average, as a rule of thumb, the altcoins are less secure than Bitcoin because Bitcoin is the largest cryptocurrency. It has the most hashing power, computing power that's securing the network. All the other coins that use the proof of work algorithm, they have
way much smaller.
Lower computing power, and it's easier to attack. And we've seen those attacks on different coins in the past.
Oh, we have seen this kind of attack even on classic Ethereum.
Ethereum Classic, Bitcoin Gold.
Maybe.
Like, yeah, so the smaller cryptocurrencies are easier to attack, and so when someone attacks the network, they can reverse the transactions. They cannot steal your money, but what they do, it's called a double spend. So they send their money to an exchange, convert it to a different coin, withdraw, then roll back the blockchain, reverse all the transactions,
And do it again.
and keep both coins. So. And most of the altcoins, if not all of them, are centralized. So there is a person who is responsible for development of the code and for marketing, for promotion, and for the development. Even Ethereum, well, Vitalik is that decides what to do next and how to change the code of this Ethereum and the inflation, how much ether to produce in every block, and they change it like every 8 months or so.
Forks.
So let's talk about forks. Probably you guys heard about them. So that's the definition from the Wikipedia. So the forks are generally the changes in the protocol of Bitcoin, or as the situations that occur when 2 or more blocks have the same block height. So I'll talk about them, what the difference behind them. So the forks are introduced usually to introduce new features, sometimes to reverse hacks or catastrophic bugs. In Ethereum, that was a couple of years ago, and in the early days of Ethereum, everyone was excited about this creation of new tokens. And what Ethereum allows is to build an organization on top of the blockchain that can run more or less itself. so they're called DAOs, Decentralized Autonomous Organization, and there was the DAO that the smart contract wasn't audited properly. People invested like $150 million in the DAO, and then someone found a bug
in the code
and withdrew half of the money
from their addresses.
from the treasury. So Ethereum, the community decided, okay, we'll roll back and we'll fork, so we'll not include those blocks that where the hack occurred.
Happened.
However, the community split at that moment, and that's how we have Ethereum Classic that continues on the old version of the blockchain, and Ethereum, like the sort of original one that we have right now. So yeah, so the forks require consensus resolution, that people have to agree. If they don't, then we have a split. So Bitcoin had a few forks to fix bugs. I think the latest one was about a year ago. That was a fork that was resolved quickly, and everyone agreed with that. So there was the split. So what happens with the situation when the two different blocks have the same height, which means that a lot of different miners around the world are trying to solve the problem. They try to do the proof of work, and two of them they find the solution for the problem at the same time. So because the world is big, it takes time for the data to propagate, maybe several seconds. So, but they continue they attach their own block, as you can see somewhere right here. So, and then we have a blockchain split. So half of the miners, they think this is the correct one. The other half sees the different version of the blockchain. So in Bitcoin protocol, it's resolved whoever finds the next block first. So the longest chain wins. So it means everyone agrees that we abandon the shorter version. We continue to build the blockchain, the new transactions on the longer version. Usually the transactions, they don't disappear. The transactions are more or less the same. Well, maybe they will be included in different blocks, but nothing happens to the transactions. So this happens, if not every day, but like at least once a week. So that's a standard normal situation, and we know how to resolve it. No one is concerned about that thing. So there are soft forks, another thing, and the hard forks. Probably you've heard of them too. So the soft fork is the introduction of the new rules in the protocol, so that there's stricter rules. So I've read this comparison. For example, if you go to a vegan restaurant where everything is vegan and you want to buy a steak, so that would be a hard fork because it's not compatible with the menu of the restaurant. So they have to change the menu and the sign on the restaurant. However, if you go to a normal restaurant which serves everything and then you only want a vegan menu, so that would be a soft fork. So it's still compatible with the old menu of the restaurant, but you still have your vegan dish. So the soft fork are similar to this. When at some point the community decide that we will have stricter rules. However, if you run the older version of the software, those rules are compatible with the older versions. Hard forks, they don't have this compatibility. So that's exactly, if you introduce steak in vegan restaurants, you have to change the name of the restaurants to Bitcoin Cash. So this is what they've done actually. And there are two different forks when people create new coins. So you can take the Bitcoin source code and you change it, and you start from the very beginning, from the Genesis block. So this is considered a fork of Bitcoin, but without the history. So and then the Litecoin did this thing. And sometimes, I think Bitcoin Cash started this thing. So when you take the source code and the entire history of the blockchain up until a certain block, and after that block you introduce the new rules that are not compatible with the previous version. However, everyone who was on the blockchain before finds themselves on two blockchain right now. And if you had Bitcoin before the fork of Bitcoin Cash, you would have both coins, so both blockchains, the Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. So then there is a problem how you split them without losing your Bitcoins, but that's a different presentation.
Now, why Bitcoin?
Yeah, so
Economically, why Bitcoin?
in general, so when you are introduced to this crypto space, you see like there are thousands of different coins only on coin market cap, and who knows how many are not listed. So the coins are being created every day. So what should you look at, and should you even think of buying Bitcoin
Or go with altcoin.
or any other altcoins? So I will be talking in general. Why, if you are a beginner, well, actually, the more you stay in the space, the more you understand that the value proposition of Bitcoin and the lack of value proposition of other coins. In terms of savings, I'll be talking about in terms of savings, because like Ethereum has a little bit different proposition, and they're trying not to present Ether as a form of money.
Yeah, Serum is how you access to to distributed computational engine. It's not money; it's something else. So, and right now, let's talk about money.
Well, they try to present it as not money, but it has value.
It has value.
People buy Ethereum and they expect it to go up. However, it's not the
core idea
core
of Ethereum.
proposition of Ethereum. Ethereum is the global computer, and in order for you to run software, you have to pay for the computational power, and you pay with Ether of the native currency. So why Bitcoin? Bitcoin is hard to produce. This is one of the qualities of money. So they call the hard money or sound money. So eventually people tend to use money that is the hardest to produce, because if it's easy to produce, instead of working and building stuff and selling goods and services, people can just produce money. If there's seashells, instead of working
hard to get some
in the garden, hunting, you can just go to the beach, collect shells, and exchange it to the goods and services. So Bitcoin is very hard to produce. That's why it's expensive. It burns a lot of energy, and so that's one of the points. In terms of decentralization, so why Bitcoin Cash forked off of Bitcoin? They didn't like the speed and the lack of scalability of Bitcoin, so they increased the size of the block. So it leads to increasing costs of running a node in the network. A node is like a computer that has a copy of the database, which means eventually less and less nodes will be in the network, and it will get more and more centralized.
And hence controlled, and hence vulnerable.
If you have a handful of nodes, then it's easy to find them and start controlling the entire network. So Bitcoin goes to different route. It keeps the block size small, and scaling will be introduced on the second layer. So not on the blockchain, but Lightning or centralized, something like Coinbase or exchanges, something like that. But because of the smaller blocks, everyone can join the network. You don't need the specialized equipment. You can use your laptop or a cheap computer. And even with those small blocks right now, it takes a couple of weeks to download the blockchain, and so
maybe rather 3 weeks. 3 weeks.
So even right now it takes 3 weeks to download the entire blockchain and validate everything. If you imagine 10 years in the future, it's double that size. But if you introduce a larger block, the size of the blockchain will
Enormously
grow,
big.
dramatically, and less people can afford to join the network. And it may lead to centralization, which
Compromise the idea.
which compromise the idea, and the Bitcoin community doesn't want that. Low supply rate of coins. So basically, this idea comes from, well, that's probably you've heard the comparison of Bitcoin as with gold, like digital gold. Same thing. The supply of gold is very low because we accumulated gold in thousands of years, and now the production of new supply is around 1.5% a year.
Of the one that we already have.
Of the stock that we have above ground. So this is the similar to Bitcoin. Right now, the supply of Bitcoin around 4%, but next May it's going to be less than 2%. It's going to be closer than gold. 4 years after that, it's going to be even less than gold, and then eventually it will stop. Will go almost to zero. Which means that if you keep your savings in Bitcoin, the inflation is not gonna dilute your wealth.
It's definitely the case for any other fiat money.
It's that's the tool to fight the fiat money inflation. So you can't really keep your savings in fiat because it's just gonna lose your value because of the inflation. That's why you have to come up with ideas where you're gonna invest your savings in stock market, real estate, gold, or whatnot. So Bitcoin is one of those instruments where you can keep your savings. So the Bitcoin is a global final settlement. So you can send money almost instantly across the globe without the use of the central bank. Before Bitcoin, the only way to send money abroad was through the central bank, asking the permission, explaining who is getting the money and why, and so on. And also, it's final settlement because when you send money through the banks, you pay with your credit card. It's not really the money; it's just a promise. And eventually, I don't really know exactly how it works. What's the final settlement in the banks? But with Bitcoin, you send the real final value from one account to another. There's no credit, so as of this moment, no promissory notes or IOUs. Another good point for Bitcoin is cheap to verify. It's impossible to forge Bitcoin. So it's possible to forge gold. It's difficult to check. You need special equipment. With Bitcoin, if you run the software on your mobile phone, or you need to run a node, but it's pretty cheap right now, and it's fast. You know when you're getting Bitcoin that you can be sure that this is the original Bitcoin, not the fake one.
So just to give a strong statement, it's very difficult to find solution and hash rate and everything, but it's very easy to verify it. Okay, so this is like not mix one another.
So unless you are a victim of those forks or altcoin scams, when you just come to this space, you start researching, you Google Bitcoin and you see like Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin
Diamonds
and all the other Bitcoins. So I've seen a lot of people, they were confused and they were buying, like, let's say Bitcoin Cash. They were thinking that's a real Bitcoin, especially because Bitcoin Cash owns the bitcoin.com domain name and the Bitcoin Twitter handle. So that was very confusing. That was their marketing strategy of kind of tricking people into believing that Bitcoin Cash is the real Bitcoin. And eventually, according to the Austrian economics or the theory of money, eventually in the free market, people will kind of diverge into using one sort of money. So between the competing money, the one money will win and it will take everything else. So people will stop using all the other money. That's what we had during the gold standard. So we stopped using silver. As soon as we learned how to use the banknotes backed by gold. So we used silver because it was difficult to
Cut piece of gold in a small chunk. Nothing to say, not everybody is expert in a gold and can find, is this yellow metal is gold or is just looks so much close to gold.
So and then we see that the Bitcoin was chosen by the free market. People started to pay for Bitcoin without anyone forcing them to do so, and it evolved to the size that we have right now. The Bitcoin is $10,000 per coin. People are paying, people are buying. It has the highest market cap.
200 million kind of.
Yes, around 200 billion right now, and it has the 70% of the
all amount of value in all the coins.
market dominance, it's called. So if you're thinking of investing in cryptocurrency, Bitcoin would be the safest bet, at least in the very beginning, until you figure everything out and you can decide for yourself.
Or you have very special use case. Very special use case.
Well, that
which
wouldn't
usually
be,
not
that wouldn't be like
beginner.
keeping your savings.
Yeah.
And then talking again about altcoins and different blockchains, and you've probably heard of the public blockchain, private blockchain, corporate blockchain, permissionless. So this five pillars of open blockchains actually from Andreas Antonopoulos, the guy, the educator, the most famous one in the world, travels around the world educating people about Bitcoin and blockchain. So this is his idea of what to look in the blockchain, or actually which qualities the blockchain should have
Yes.
in order to be open.
To cold open.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go through it very quickly. So it has to be public. It means anyone can join the network. You don't need a
Any permission.
You, as he said, you don't even have to be a human. So software can use the blockchain and can use Bitcoin and send. So you don't need anything. Neutral means no one should care who is the sender, who is the receiver, and why you're sending the payment. It should be censorship resistant. Obviously, no one can stop the payment from happening. It should be borderless, means that you can access your money anywhere in the world. And open, meaning that anyone can continue developing software on top of the blockchain. So the PayPal is a closed payment system. You cannot really build anything on top of the PayPal without getting permission from PayPal. Yeah, that's in a nutshell. But if you want to learn more about this, just Google this talk about 30 minutes by Andreas Antonopoulos, 5 pillars of open blockchains. So, like, if you're excited about Bitcoin right now,
Yeah, let's put excitement down.
yeah, like,
It is risky.
yeah, but we have to warn you about the risks that you can encounter when dealing with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general. So as I mentioned before, the privacy is a concern with Bitcoin. And why it's a concern? Because if someone knows you own a Bitcoin, like if they know this address belongs to you, they see the amount of Bitcoins you own. If they like this amount that you own, they can actually track you and physically attack you. So that's why I try not to connect your name to your Bitcoin addresses and not to talk about your investments in Bitcoin and how much you own and stuff like that. At least you have to think about the situation that this is possible. And why it's the Bitcoin is actually ideal for theft, because the transactions are irreversible. So once you send your transaction to an attacker, it cannot be reversed. And also why it's ideal, all the attacks can be done remotely. Bitcoin is a digital currency, so it's difficult to steal your cash from your pocket remotely, but it's very easy steal Bitcoin. If you think about the storage of Bitcoin, it's also not a trivial task. So you need at least you need a special software which is available. You can download to your phone. However, you have to make sure this is the authentic software, not a malware that the attacker may be like trying to steal your Bitcoin if you do it wrong. Then also you have to make sure that you always have backups of your software, because you can lose your phone, your desktop, laptop, phones, they may die, something may happen. So you need to have a backup. But when you have a backup somewhere written on the paper, you also have to make sure that no one else can see it. So that's the problem you have to balance. You need to have a backup, but it has to be stored in a place where no one can see it. And also you have to keep in mind that if it's paper, it can be destroyed by mice, by fire, by water. You can lose it. Probably your phone lasts for several years, and you don't really need the backups for those several years. But 5 years from now, something happens to your phone, you're looking for a backup, you cannot find it, nothing can be done. Your Bitcoins are gone forever.
There is no support line.
Another thing is the volatility. That's probably you know, Bitcoin goes up tenfold, then it drops by 80%. And usually when you lose your wealth at such a speed, you make emotional decisions, and what happens, you buy at the peak, you sell at the bottom.
Continue do it a couple of times and you bankrupt.
Yeah, so but that's just this is one of the risks I've seen several people that they were actually saying that Bitcoin is a bad thing. I'm not gonna touch Bitcoin anymore because I was trading, buying at high, selling at low.
So
Nothing to do with Bitcoin. It's just like human emotions. But you need to keep this in mind. So the best strategy that's happening right now, you buy at whatever price it is right now,
and keep.
and keep it for several years. So there are risks that Bitcoin will fail. I think I've talked about it last time. So this may happen. This is a new experimental technology. We don't really know fully what's happening and how it's going to evolve. But if it succeeds, it may increase in value like 100-fold. So if you're wrong, if you lose, if it fails, so you lose small. If it succeeds, you will win big. And the last thing I wanted to mention, it's in relation to the storage of Bitcoin, all these backups and passwords, is the inheritance planning. So if you have your wealth in your phone or anywhere else, so you probably want to pass it on to your children. And it's not a trivial task to do. It's not. You cannot write your private key or password or the backup seed in your will, because whoever sees your backup seed can steal your coins, and you will never know who did this. So in this sort, it's anonymous. So that's not a trivial task. And the last slide for today. So just remember, the first thing you do when you create your new wallet, whatever it's hardware wallet, software wallet, any other wallet, just write down your backup seed phrase. Usually it's 12 to 24 different English words. Just take pencil and paper, write it down, put it somewhere safe,
Do you
where no
due
one can find
diligence?
it. This is very important because you'll forget about it
Easily.
and then your Bitcoins are gone. If you're buying Bitcoins on an exchange, just remember not to keep it there. Unless you're actively trading, buy Bitcoin, move out into your personal wallet where you control them. Because when they are on an exchange, you don't control those coins. So exchange has the private key. So basically what you have is an IOU. So you are hoping that an exchange, which is not licensed, not regulated, will give you
Pretty
Bitcoin
wild.
whenever you ask. And as you know, maybe about Quadriga, CX, that's the largest Canadian exchange. It was operating for like, I don't know, 5-6 years and just disappeared with over $200 million in cryptocurrencies.
Well, word exchange should mention it is exchange, and if you are a trader but not like good enough and you put some loss and everything, and price goes up and down, it's very easy to trigger that condition and lost everything. So unless you know what you do, exchange is not the place where you keep your money.
So just as a rule of thumb, you buy Bitcoin on an exchange, move it out right away. And the very beginning, don't buy any altcoins. So yeah, you might speculate, you might make some money, but most likely you lose money.
Unless you wanna get some experience in a hard way.
So theoretically, so what's happening? The exchanges, the cryptocurrency exchanges, they're more like casinos, like gambling websites, and people buy different coins without even knowing what they are. They just look at the different tickers, different letters. They buy one, they try to. Basically, it's gambling. Unless this is your goal, unless you decide to lose all your money that you move to that exchange, I don't recommend to buy altcoins. I don't recommend to keep your money at an exchange. I always recommend to back up your seat. That's the first thing you do. And learn about cybersecurity. Not only how to secure your Bitcoin wallet, but how not to leak your IP addresses, how to keep your computers uncompromised without different malware.
Not only computers, cell phones, so important. So
because if you don't have any Bitcoins on your computer and it's compromised, the worst case, you lose your data. But if you have your Bitcoins there, especially your life savings,
it's gone.
Especially if 10 years from now Bitcoin's $100,000 or $1 million as they promise, it's not gonna be good.
It can be, by the way, $1 million. If we calculate, it can be.
Yeah? So right now Bitcoin is sucking up all the value from all different currencies, cryptocurrencies and fiat currencies all over the world. Like, not from strongest yet, not from the US dollar, but
from easiest one, from the software.
Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Turkey, Iran. So those are collapsing. That's it for today. So guys, I'm sure you have questions. Covered quite a few topics. Oh, Ralph.
Because if you guys don't have questions, we're gonna ask you. Oh, people in a.
Well, this was good basics, and I've got a number of new people, including a cop in the police department who doesn't know anything about it. So I'm going to send him tonight's thing when you post it, because this is a nice, simple explanation of the whole stream of things.
Absolutely, more than welcome, and sure, we'll do our best to help them. Absolutely.
Yeah, the video is going to be online, so you can share the video, or they can contact me if they have any questions. Happy to help. So what's your favorite coin?
If you have any. Go ahead.
My favorite would be what we're coming out with, the secure coin.
Secure coin.
That's going to be 100% backed by gold, with our gold mine in Ecuador. And of course, you know, the people of BlockStation are putting that company onto the stock market.
That's so 1996.
Yeah. See,
We
ideas
already had
are still
EGold.
around. Absolutely. Okay, probably.
So do you guys have any coins, Bitcoin anyone owes? Do you know how the wallet looks like?
And you remember, right? What we suggested like 5 minutes ago.
So the next week we will be talking about how to store Bitcoin, about the wallets, about the security risks, and all the stuff. So if you want to learn more about how to secure your Bitcoin, how to keep it safe, that's going to be the topic that next Tuesday. Okay.
Cool.
Do you have a question?
Actually, I have a question, guys. Let's say, imaginary solution. If you need to move your money around the world, what you guys leveraging now? And how much you pay to leverage those solutions? If you need to transfer money from Canada to US or Canada to France, do you have even idea how much you pay for that? You pay. So, like, I'm not saying good or bad or whatever. Back in the days, it must, and currently it's kind of service, and service asks for money. But in order you to move your own money within your own pocket, you need to pay your own money to some third person. Just digest it.
Yeah. Well, moving your money around, again, this came up with our Green Gold company with BlockStation, to get people to invest in your new STO token. If someone is investing in a regular stock, a regular way, maybe only $100, because they happen to have $100, well, they have to go to an exchange where it'll cost $19 just to send $100.
Yep.
Whereas to send $100 on using cryptocurrency, it's 50 cents.
By the way, if you are talking about Bitcoin and you might hear that transaction should be paid, blah blah blah, you can actually send money for free. This transaction will take some time, and it was a day, 24 hours, or 23 hours.
The minimum is 1 Satoshi per byte, so it's like 152 Satoshis is the lowest you can pay.
Which
and
is like,
well, that's a couple of cents.
yeah, which is like,
But it might take some time. It might take a day or two, or depending on how many transactions are on the network at the moment.
but that's actually a bigger story. But yeah.
But technically, the Bitcoin is not for cheap transactions. So it's right now it's cheap because the adoption is quite low. So it's the very beginning. So it's less than % of population use Bitcoin or used Bitcoin at some point. So, but eventually, if more and more people join the network, the transaction will be more and more expensive. And right now, the narrative is that Bitcoin is the store of value. So basically, almost like a digital gold. I don't really like this comparison completely, but it's easy to understand. So you buy a brick of gold and you store it, and if you want to send it somewhere, how much it's going to cost? So
it's gonna be expensive.
Sending Bitcoin is going to be expensive, but cheaper than sending gold.
Okay, guys, thanks so much for coming in studio and online.
Let me check the online viewers and see if they have questions.
Oh, that would be great.
The audio is very low. Can I speak louder? Yes, I can. What will happen when there is less and less Bitcoin to mine? How will the transactions be verified? If there is less incentive to mine, will that decrease the value?
Transaction, as we said seconds ago, transaction cost money. So it's not only revert on mining, but each time in order to pay, you pay for a miner kind of to include your transaction in a block. So even all the Bitcoins are mined, transactions are still running. They just cost more.
Yeah, so the idea is that when the more and more people will join the network, more and more people will want to send transactions, and this is kind of an open market. So you suggest how much you would like to pay. So that's the transaction fee. And the miners, they may choose to include your transactions in this block or not to include, maybe for the next block. And if you're paying small fee, you might wait for a week and it might never be included in the blockchain at all, because all the other participants, they pay more. And miners, especially when we are talking, when the block subsidy or so-called the rewards, they're cutting and becoming smaller and smaller, so the miners will rely only on the transactions fee. And that's the idea, that with time, more people join the network, the price of Bitcoin will go up. It's going to be $1 million. So probably it's as one theory. So Bitcoin is not for the personal transactions, but will replace something, the transactions between the central banks. When right now, basically the settlement between banks is done by sending gold. So even if one transaction costs you $1,000, but you're sending 100 million, so maybe it's not that much, but the transactions can be settled in minutes. And probably normal people will be using Bitcoin on the second layer, maybe decentralized Lightning, or a centralized solution. Maybe we'll have banks that will keep your Bitcoin for you, that will solve actually the security problems, that will introduce trust. However, I don't think most people are ready to be their own banks, to be responsible to keep their life savings safe. Because as I mentioned, there are lots of risks. It can be hacked, there can be physical attack, you can lose your recovery phrase, and you might not figure out how to pass your Bitcoin, so your children have to die. So maybe we'll have some sort of Bitcoin banks where they will move the payments within their databases, but eventually the settlement will be done once a day, or once a week, or once every now and then between the banks. And the Bitcoin transaction fee should go up to support the miners and the security of the network. That's the idea. If it doesn't go up, it's not going to work. But economically, it should. Because everything is limited. Number of Bitcoins are limited, and there will be more and more people joining the network.
Yes.
Yeah, so hope I answered the question. And let's wrap up for today, so we'll continue the discussion.
Well, don't forget to mention about Friday here.
Yes, Friday here there will be Lou organizing the meetup.
I don't know who are.
Yeah,
Lou
and Bitcoin Bay, they're organizing the meetup here on Friday, 7 p.m. And I think they will be talking about the merchant adoption of cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, there's going to be an open bar.
Yeah.
Which is great.
So same place, Friday, that channel, 7 p.m. How to accept Bitcoin in your business.
Cool.
Okay, thank you very much, and see you Friday, and next Tuesday at That Crypto.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Awesome.